Hi, everybody. It's Ravit. I'm running product for Totango. I'm sure we had a chance to meet either on the last webinars or face to face in other Totango events. What I want to cover today is the escalation success block. What are the best practices that we are looking at, where you can find them, and more than that, how can you leverage those success block within Totango? So we'll actually go into Totango and configure an escalation success block and see how you can leverage all the nice things that were delivered as part of Spark. Just before we'll start, our mission as Totango is to deliver customer-centered economy and to accelerate your delivery within this environment. We believe that in our environment, the customer is at the driving seat, and we would like to enable companies to be and center around the customer in order to drive customer-centered growth. And for that, Spark came into reality. As I mentioned before, today we will focus on escalation. Last week we focused on onboarding success block, and then next week we'll have another webinar where we'll be focused on adoption. So you will see those webinars coming almost every week with more best practices from Totango side. So one of the things before we'll start, I would like to make sure that we are all aware of and aligned is what are we trying to achieve when we are looking on escalations? Each one of us has escalation within his company, and I'm sure each one have already some kind of a process to manage escalation because this is the reality. So to me as a manager, I would like to make sure that I'm consistently continuing to resolve escalations in a timely manner, giving my customers with the best experience and leveraging that, if possible, even at the end to connect with my customers. The main three goals that I would like to ensure as part of handling escalations is minimize the number of new escalations. Obviously, I want to make sure that my product is getting better with every release of it. So I want to make sure that I'm minimizing the number of escalation by addressing more customer requirements, product issues, service issues, or quality issues that I might have with my product. I want to ensure that I'm resolving all open escalations in less than 30 days. This is a key thing to make sure that I'm getting better at. Every open escalation that I'll have, I'll close. And lastly, I want to ensure that I'm having customer trust during and post escalation. So customers really know that from my side, we'll do whatever needed in order to solve their escalation on a timely manner. And the experience that my customers will have during an escalation and post the escalation will be a very good experience. These are my high-level requirements, goals, and KPIs when I'm looking on how do I want to ensure escalations in my company. Now let's go ahead and see what Totango website can deliver around that, which data can you find there, and how do you actually take advantage of Totango Spark in order to drive those activities. So the first thing I want to do is in Totango website, repeating a little bit what we saw last time, you can go to solutions, and then under solution, you will find best practices for different success blocks: onboarding, escalation, adoption, and renewal. And we are adding more and more on a weekly basis to this website. Let's drill down to escalation, which is the item that we would like to focus on today. So the way the website is built, and I covered that last week as well, is you can find the best practices here that will give you visibility to all the areas that Spark will help you address. You have here the goals and the KPIs while managing escalations. What are the different customer lists under segments that are taking part right now within active escalations in your company? Some best practices, success plays, and campaigns. Exactly the same structure that you will see in Totango for success blocks. Within each one of those, for example, when I'm looking on the goals, I can see that we have here exactly the three goals that I was just referring to: minimize the number of new escalation, resolve open escalation, and ensure customer trust during and post escalation. For each one of them, I have the different KPIs that will enable me to measure whether I'm meeting the goals or not. Same you will see later on for the different segments that I have defined. These are the customer lists that mainly interest me. Looking on escalation by status, and I have defined different level of statuses for escalation. Escalation by reason. I want to understand what are the different reasons that drive my escalations. I want to look on recently closed escalation to engage with those customers, and also look on customers that have repeatedly escalation, to make sure that I'm addressing those customers differently. I have the best practices that we will see how I can keep in Totango. And then I have the different success plays that will drive the workflow around escalations. So, for example, the first thing that I have is making sure that there is an ongoing workflow that manage the escalation. First of all, there is a kickoff meeting in which we understand exactly what was the problem with and why did the customer escalate it. Then there's ongoing progress in order to resolve the issue. There's the resolution phase, and then there is the post resolution where I want to ensure that I'm engaging with the customer to ensure good experience. And I have few other success plays that I can drive based on the escalation status. One, for example, in order to schedule the resolution meeting with the customer in order to present him with a specific solution that we found. And the other one is guest his feedback post escalation. Leveraging the new lifecycle statuses that were offered as part of Totango Spark, you will see in a minute how can I actually enable all those activities and make sure that the workflow will be happening ongoing. And lastly, there's a list of campaigns here that talks about how do I want to ensure that I'm engaging with a customer in order to drive the escalation. Now, let's see how can I take all those nice best practices and actually leverage them within Totango Spark. So what I want to do right now is go into the product and actually configure all this data in order to show you and also to present clearly how easy is it to configure this data and this whole workflow right now, leveraging Totango Spark capabilities. So before we started the webinar, I created an escalation success block, as you can see over here. The escalation success block is in order to drive and to handle escalation, and it's mapped to escalation success flow, which all the activities around escalations are mapped to. Success flow is a concept that Totango had in the past as well. For example, when you created a task with a customer or a time touch point, we always enabled you to make sure it's tied to an escalation or to onboarding or to any other workflow that you have defined in your product. What we can do right now is also enabling you define what is the area that the success block is looking at. So I'm mapping escalation to escalation success flow. The other thing that I did before this webinar, I went ahead and defined two lifecycle statuses related to escalation. So lifecycle status is a new attribute capability in Totango. You can see over here that one of them is escalation reason. You can see the details. So escalation reason can be either by product or because of services, by relationship, or because of financial terms. I defined what are the different reasons for an escalation as a list in Totango, and later on it will be very easy for me to identify the reason of the escalation and trigger the right activities according to it. If the escalation reason is product, I wouldn't obviously engage my product manager. If the escalation reason is relationship, I want to make sure that my executive team is engaged as well. So understanding the escalation reason is key in order to engage with the right people in your company. The other life cycle status that I have defined here is escalation stage. I need to understand where the escalation is right now in order to make sure that the right activities are being driven. And you can see here that I have new escalation, assessment, execution, resolution, monitoring, and close. I have few statuses that I would like to track in order to make sure that I have the right activities. And right now, when we will create the relevant success plays, when we will create right now the campaigns, we will take an advantage in understanding those stages and the escalation reasons. So these are lists that I've made sure that I prepared just before we started this webinar, and you will see how we can take advantage of those right now when I'll configure the data. So let's move to escalation success block. And the first thing that I can define here is the scorecard, where I can define my goals and my KPIs, as we discussed them a minute ago, in order to make sure that I have that I'm focusing on the right thing. So let's create goals, and let's start by the first goals that we referred to before: minimize the number of open escalation. Okay, so this is the goal that I would like to have. And now I can go ahead and define what are the different KPIs that I would like to see in order to measure that. So the first KPI that I would like to look at will be number of open escalation. So I'll just go ahead and define this KPI. And now for this specific one, I'll choose that I want to present it as a number. The metric that I'm looking at is accounts. I want to see how many accounts do they have with open escalations. I'll choose as the unit label sum. And now I'll choose the relevant segment that I want to have. I can either choose to look on all escalations or create a different segment. In this example, I'll choose all escalations, and then I'll go ahead and define what are the targets that I allow my company to follow when we are looking on open escalation. So I'm not allowing my company to have at any point in time more than 20 escalations open together. And I want to make sure that I always will have less than 12. So this is it. And I can see here a preview of the data. So I can see that currently it's in yellow because I do have 18 escalations within my company. I'll save that, and I have that card ready right away. Another thing that I would like to make sure I'm leveraging is the statuses that we just referred to. So another thing that I want to see is to look on escalations by stage in order to understand what's the escalation status. So escalation status, I'll define this one as a pie chart because I want to see the distribution of these metrics. Again, I'll pull accounts. Sorry, I actually said that I want to look on escalation stage. So I'll look on escalation stage. The segment that I want to look at is all escalation. And you can see how beautiful is it on the right side. I can right away see what's the distribution of the open escalation between the different statuses that I have. I'll save this as another KPI, and I'll actually define another KPI that looks on the distribution of escalations, looking on their escalation reason, because it is very important for me to understand what's the distribution of escalation between product or services or financial terms. This will enable me to drive the right activities later on as part of it. So I'll define this as escalation by reason. And I'll add that as well. See how easy was it to figure out how can I minimize the number of, how can I measure, the number of escalation and to understand its distribution. If I'll save it right now, I can see that right away, I have here a very nice goal that was defined by me, minimize the number of open escalation very effective, and I can see what's the number of escalation, what's the escalation status, how the escalation is being splitted across the different statuses, and what's the escalation by reason. I can go ahead later on and also define, for example, escalation trend in order to make sure that I'm actually minimizing the number of open escalation. Another thing that I talked about was that I want to make sure that I understand also that I have across the time customer experience and trust while we have an escalation. So let's define that as a goal. Okay, so I have that as a goal. Now, after defining this one as a goal, I can go ahead and define the different KPIs that will enable me to understand those items. So the first one that I'll be looking at is NPS, after escalation. Okay, so I define that. And now this one is a number. Okay, the metric that I will be using here is NPS, obviously, the latest score of NPS, which I have in the system. I look on the average number as the aggregation here. And the unit label is average as well. And again, I look on opens on closed escalation, because I want to see that the NPS score after escalation is actually good. Now, the issue I have here is that I do not have the right segment, as you can see. I can either go ahead and create a segment on the fly, or I can go and leverage something that I have right now in the system. What I want to do in order to show how easy is it, I'll actually go ahead and leverage something that I already have in the system. Obviously, I could also go ahead and define a specific segment. But I do know that my company within segments had always best practices and some data point for escalations. So I do have here a segment that shows me all the closed escalations that I have in my company. What I'll do, I'll take all the escalation segments and I'll choose each one of them and I'll move them to the success block. Instead of recreating them, I can go ahead and just move them to the success block. And that will enable me leveraging those very quickly. So now I'll move those 4 segments to the escalation success block. As you can see, I'm back into the escalation success block. I was taken here automatically by the system, and I have all the segments created here. Now I can go ahead very quickly to configure the KPI that I was just looking at. So I can go ahead and say NPS post escalation. I can choose again the metrics, NPS latest score. And now when we'll be looking on the segments, you can see that very quickly I have all the segments that I just moved to the success block. So I will be looking on closed escalation because that's what interests me when I'm looking on NPS post escalation. I'll define my target. So let's say I have here 6 and I want to make sure it will be greater than 8. I'll define that. And right away, I'm going to have this metric popping up here. So I'll keep that. And obviously, I can continue and configure more and more the goals and the KPIs that we were looking at. But I want to make sure that we will have time within this webinar to look on other areas as well. So we won't do that right now. But again, as you saw, it's a very, very easy process. You just need to make sure that you're following the definition of a KPI, which is very simple. What do you want to measure? on top of which segment, and which metric do you want to present. Now, looking at the segments that I have, I already created all the segments that I have in my company. I have here a few reports that were already created, but now the new thing that Spark enable us to do is to define best practices. I can make sure that my company is going through a very consistent and effective process of handling those escalations. And people, whenever they have any problem, they'll be able to quickly access the document here and see who are the people within my company that they should engage with. In order to do that, I'll upload to Totango the best the best practices that I have. So first, one of them is how to deal with an escalation storm. This is an important document that I want to make sure it's shared within my team across all the CSMs. And the other one is who should I reach with a problem? I want to make sure that those two documents are actually in Totango. So when a CSM will be driving and handling an escalation, it will be very quickly for him to know who should he contact. So I'm uploading those two documents, and now I have them in Totango. So see how easy was it? Next area that I would like to manage is success plays. I want to drive the right workflow on top of my escalations. So I do have some success plays that were created for escalations till today, because my company always dealt with escalations, not only now with Spark. But what I can do right now is to take an advantage of some of the data that now is available within Spark and wasn't available there before, which is the escalation status and the escalation reason. So if I'll go right now and I'll look on one of those items, first of all, I can go ahead, mark it, and like I did with segments, I can just move it to the success play. So you can see I can move it right away and it will be taken to the success play. Specifically, enabled success plays cannot be moved to a success block. Those can only be copied there. If I'll take one that is not enabled at this point, I'll be able to define to which success block I want to move it. And right away, it will appear, as you can see it here, within the escalation success block. So now I have one success play that is looking on the workflow for escalation within the escalation success block. But I want to do more than that. I know that right now I can manage and understand the status of an escalation. I can go ahead and define that when escalation reached a resolution stage, I need to schedule a resolution meeting with a client, for example. So I can go ahead and define right now an escalation success play on the fly, which is very simple, very similar to things that you are already doing, but I want to make sure that now I'm taking advantage of the status. So if I'll go right now, I'll choose escalation by status, and I will define that schedule a resolution meeting. This is the success play that I would like to drive. And what I'll say is that I want to take only accounts that gets to resolution status. So I can go ahead and define a very quick segment on the fly that will say accounts that gets to their status changed in the last day to resolution. Schedule a resolution meeting with the customer, right? Now I will find all the accounts that moving to resolution status. See how easy was it? I just very quickly understood who are those accounts. I'll go ahead and I'll ask the CSM, please schedule And I can obviously go ahead and say account name, leverage all the capabilities that Totango already have. I'll add the account name here. This is assigned to the CSM of the account. And let's say it's been assigned by me, and you have 1 day to complete this task. As you can see, I can also attach documents to the success play. So if I have specific guidelines that I would like to give the CSM while he's doing it, I can add that here as well. I'll finish the task, I'll activate the success play, and this is it. The success play is now working. The fact that I could take an advantage of a specific stage of the escalation made it very, very easy for me in order to do that. For example, if I want to do right now the same for accounts that completed escalation, because I want to make sure that I'm sending them an NPS to understand the escalation, how the escalation experience was, I can go ahead and just define all the escalations that were completed. Just show me that, and the send NPS to customer, and this will be very, very easy for me. As you can see, one nice thing that happens is, and this is it. Let me just post this one as well. One nice thing that happened right now, because I'm creating all those success plays in the context of the escalation success block, is that those success plays are associated with escalation right away. So if I'll go later on and we'll look on success plays that are associated with escalations in order to understand the context of those, very quickly I will get all of these. Last thing that I can do over here is I can go ahead and define campaigns that are relevant for escalation. So if I want to tell the customer, hey, don't be angry, we are taking care of your escalations, I can go ahead and create those right now, understanding all the different data points and the statuses of an escalation. I do have in my company already some campaigns that were created, for example, with status update for escalation. This is a campaign that I already configured in the past. What I can do right now, besides only looking on this campaign, is moving the campaign again to the success block. So this is escalation success block. I can move the campaign, and again, right away, it's appear on the escalation success block. So the escalation success block gives me an end-to-end picture of what is been happening with escalation, how to drive escalations, how to engage internally with my CSMs to make sure they are promoting those escalations from stage to stage, and more than that, how to engage with the customer. Now, all of that is without any manual work. Once I'm configuring this flow, as you just saw me doing right now as part of the escalation success block, everything will be handled automatically for you. The system will trigger those campaigns, those success plays every time based on the customer status. It took us, I believe, around 15 minutes while I was talking to do that. It should take you even less than that. Most of you already have those workflows and processes defined in their company. What you need to do is, one, to make sure you're arranging the assets within the right success block, escalation success block, as we just saw it. Second, you can always take leverage on all the nice features that Totango Spark enable you to do. One thing that we didn't look at before is, for example, when I'm looking on segment, you can see how easy is it. I can see all the escalations, all the escalated accounts that I have. And if I'm going to the progress view, I can see how the distribution is within each account looking on the different reasons, product, services, relationships, so I can very quickly understand what is the issue of each one of those escalation. And then if I'll go to the timeline and I know that this is a product related escalation, I have to make sure that within the timeline, it will be one of the touch points will be to make sure that the product team is engaging with this account. And I'll see here a work that is relevant for that. So here, for example, when I'm looking on one of the accounts, I do not see that the product team was engaged. Let me go and sort it out by the different statuses. Here, the product team is the reason for the escalation, but no one engaged with them. I do not see any touch point that says, I talked with the product team and they will reach out to the customer, which means I need to take an action here. I need to make sure that something will happen within this account. So now I can add a task to engage with the product manager, and the CSM it actually owns it because it's very, very critical that the customer will be speaking with the product manager, because the reason here is product and not something else. The person that is responsible will be the success manager. I'll say that it's high, and I'll just escalate this task. So as you saw, it's very, very easy to come up with the right workflow and to set up Totango to show and to provide good visibility to your escalation processes within the company. We can continue right now and configure additional goals if needed, or additional KPIs, additional success plays and campaigns. I'm sure all of you have those assets already. So you can take those, move them to Escalation SuccessBLOC, change the ones that you need, and then take leverage of those items. I really hope it was helpful. Few questions that I see here is, one, whether this session was recorded. The answer is yes. You will be getting a recording of these sessions, and what we will do, we'll do some of those I guess live configuration sessions, even few times. Another question that we have here is, what's the concept of follow within the SuccessBLOC? Follow functionality didn't change as part of Totango Spark. It is something that we are looking at, but follow at this point means exactly the same. You will be getting updates on the segments while you will be leveraging the follow functionality. Another question that I see here is whether I can configure specific KPIs here that will show me trend. And the answer is definitely yes. If you will be looking, if I'll go again to the edit scorecard, I can choose here trend, and this will give me the ability to configure trend. So once I'll choose here, for example, accounts, and I'll choose segment all escalations, or different one. Sorry, this one didn't have data. I need to choose a segment that has data. This will give me the ability to understand exactly the trend that is going on, and then leverage that as part of the KPIs. So the answer here is definitely yes. You can also leverage trends in order to see the data for each one of the KPIs. Let me see if there are any more questions. Last question that we have here is, will we do the same hands-on sort of webinar for onboarding? The answer is yes, but you can also find all the details in the website, in Totango website, as well as engaging with the customer success team. They can provide and help with each one of those SuccessBLOC, configuring those and taking advantage of the new functionality of Totango Spark. With that, as we don't have any other questions, I want to close. I hope it was helpful. I hope you saw the power that Totango Spark gives you while configuring those processes for your organization and while following the success block areas one after the other and taking advantage of all the new functionality that Totango Spark provides you. I will be available as well as always through my emails. Same for the CSMs. If you have any follow up questions or if you would like to provide us feedback for Totango Spark, we will be more than happy to get it. Thank you.